Hello, my name is Ayla. My sister smiled as my wedding dress caught fire. She said it was an accident. And my mother? She told me not to make a scene. They called it a misunderstanding, a joke. But how do you laugh when the one thing you've been dreaming of burns in front of your eyes? They toasted over the ashes like nothing happened. They planned who would replace me if I couldn't handle the pressure. And for a while, I said nothing. But what if silence was never weakness? What if I was never the fragile one? What really happened at that bonfire? And why didn't anyone stop her? I had always believed that when my time came, when I finally got to walk down that aisle, I would at least get to own the moment, not in the flashy, headline-grabbing kind of way, but in the quiet confidence of knowing the day was truly mine. After years of being the one who stepped aside, the one who made room, I thought, just this once, I'd be the centerpiece. The backyard was dressed for celebration, but it didn't feel like mine. I stood near the archway covered in pale pink roses, the ones I'd personally picked out because they reminded me of my grandmother's garden, and yet somehow, they felt like they belonged to someone else now. The string lights hanging across the patio sparkled under the late afternoon sun. It should have felt magical. Instead, all I could think was, why are there so many gold accents? I had never liked gold. I asked for sage and blush. Celine loved gold. Guests were trickling in, and I noticed the first awkward glances toward the welcome sign. Celebrating Ayla Blaine. And Celine's 40th. The font was bigger for her name than mine. A few people raised their brows but said nothing. I stared at the sign for a long minute before forcing a polite smile and walking toward the drinks table. Mom approached, her arms already stretched for a hug. "Sweetheart, it looks beautiful, doesn't it?" I nodded, careful with my words. "It's a little more extravagant than I imagined." She tilted her head like she was explaining something to a toddler. "Well, honey, Celine's turning 40. It's a milestone, and it's not like you're having a big church wedding or anything." The edge of her sentence scraped something inside me. I reminded myself not to react. Celine strolled past in a silk robe, hair pinned high, makeup immaculate. She looked like she was walking a red carpet. That robe was white. Who wears white to an engagement party that's not theirs? An hour passed. Guests mingled, music played. One of Blaine's jazz playlists I had added to the queue. Thank God. I stayed mostly at the edges, answering congratulations with practiced warmth. It wasn't until Blaine arrived that I relaxed, even a little. He leaned in and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. "Just absorbing it all." "Hey, babe," he said, kissing my temple. "Your aunt asked if we'd have time to dance later." "Depends," I muttered. "If I still have a role in this event." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Before I could answer, the room shifted. There was a collective hush as Celine descended the stairs. In a full-length ivory gown, not a cocktail dress, not a brunch-appropriate outfit, a gown. My heart dropped. Phones came out like we were at a red carpet event. I heard gasps, happy ones. And then Mom, from across the patio, said the thing that sealed it. "Oh my goodness, you look like the bride." Laughter followed, some polite, some not so polite. I felt my face freeze into a smile. My mouth curved while my stomach nodded. She knew exactly what she was doing. Celine thrived on attention, but this crossed into something else. Stealing the spotlight at someone else's engagement party? Even for her, it was bold. She stopped in front of me and twirled. "Ayla, isn't this dress divine? I got it from that little boutique near Broad Street. You know the one you mentioned once?" "I remember," I said. "Didn't think you'd actually shop there." She smirked. "Well, I didn't want to overshadow you in photos, but white looks so good with my skin tone." My fingers clenched the stem of my glass. I didn't respond. I was too busy trying not to create a scene. Blaine looked uncomfortable. He leaned closer again. "Do you want me to say something?" I shook my head. "Not now. Let her have her moment." But inside, something fractured. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't insecurity. It was the slow, painful realization that no one, not even the people who loved me, saw how wrong this was. Later that evening, after the last guest left and the last forced photo was taken, I slipped away to the dining room where the extra invitation cards were kept. I pulled one out from the envelope and stared at it. The paper was thick, embossed, high-end. Mom had insisted we spare no expense on the print materials. Celine's 40th, in gold leaf. Ayla plus Blaine in faded blush script beneath. I ran my finger over my name. You could barely read it unless you tilted the card under the light. A knock on the door startled me. Blaine peeked in. "You okay?" I nodded, slipping the card back. I just needed a minute. He came closer, wrapping his arms around me. "Hey, this was a beautiful evening. A little over the top, maybe, but you handled it with grace." "I shouldn't have had to handle it," I whispered. He didn't argue. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the laughter, the comments, the way Celine's dress shimmered in the fairy lights, the moment she twirled for the cameras and claimed space that was supposed to be mine. I whispered into the dark, barely audible even to myself. I wonder if my wedding is even mine anymore. The toast echoed in my ears long after the clapping had died down. Celine's voice lingered like cheap perfume. "To Ayla's big day, and my fabulous 40th. She'd said it with the same bright smile she wore when she accidentally took credit for things she didn't do. The table had roared with laughter, their glasses raised high. I hadn't moved. My hands were still folded in my lap, my plate untouched. My name was in her mouth, but the celebration wasn't about me. Not really. It never had been. After that brunch, I needed air. Not just the kind you breathe, but the kind you don't have to share with people who clap while your dignity is quietly shoved under the table. Blaine offered to drive, but I told him I wanted to walk home. "It's just 10 blocks, I said, and he nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. The wind was picking up, scattering petals from the trees down the sidewalks. I counted my steps like they were pulling me back to myself. 1, 2, 3. By the time I reached my apartment, I had rehearsed at least 7 versions of what I would have said to Celine if I'd had the guts. "You're not the bride. You need to back off, or even just enough." But none of those sentences had come out of my mouth. And that silence, it wasn't strength. Not today. The following weekend was the pre-wedding brunch at the country club. Mom's idea, of course. "People expect it," she'd said over the phone, "and it'll give Celine a chance to say something meaningful. You know how she gets when she feels left out." Left out? I almost laughed out loud. Celine had the uncanny ability to dominate every room she walked into, like a high school mean girl who'd been promoted to head of the homeowners association. She didn't need an invitation to be the center of attention. She made herself the main event whether you wanted her or not. That morning, I chose a soft floral dress, something understated, feminine. I didn't want to compete. I wanted peace. But when I arrived and saw Celine standing by the mimosa bar in a satin cream cocktail dress that clung to her like a second skin, I knew peace was a fantasy I kept writing in my head like a bad novel. My cousin April was the first to comment. "Wow," she said, leaning close with a wine glass in hand. "You two could be twins. Except, you know, Celine just has that bridal glow. She always has that presence." I didn't answer. What could I say? Thank you for complimenting my sister at my own bridal brunch. Celine turned, all smiles, and walked over. "Ayla, you look sweet," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "You always had that girl-next-door charm. It's very you." I swallowed the knot rising in my throat. "Thanks," I said. "You look luminous." "Cream suits me," she said. "But don't worry, I'd never wear white to your actual wedding. That would be tacky." She winked. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Not even close. Midway through brunch, while people filled their plates with quiche and miniature pancakes, Celine clinked her glass. "Quick question for the bride," she announced. "Where did you get your dress? You said it was custom, right?" I blinked. "Yes, from a boutique downtown. I worked with the owner directly." She tilted her head. "Oh, I assumed you just clicked one of those Etsy links, budget bride style. But boutique? Fancy." A few guests laughed. Not cruelly, but loud enough. I didn't say anything. I scanned the table for my mother. She was nodding politely, as if what Celine said had been charming, not insulting, just Celine being Celine. Blaine, across the room, met my gaze. He mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded. Of course I nodded. Later, I slipped into the hallway outside the club's restrooms, leaned against the wall, and stared at the light fixture above. It flickered, slightly off rhythm. I stood there for several minutes, inhaling shallow breaths, counting backward from 20. Back inside, as dessert trays came out, my mind wandered. Not to the cake, not to the favors or guest list, but to high school, junior year. I'd had a crush on Logan Barrett. We sat next to each other in English, passed notes under the desk. I told Celine once, in confidence. 1 week later, she showed up to school wearing his Letterman jacket. She said he asked her out. She said she couldn't help it. She said, "You'll find someone too, Ayla." That pattern had never really stopped. Every time I got close to something I wanted, Celine arrived just in time to claim it, reshape it, rename it as hers. Then she'd smile sweetly, arms open, as if to say, "It's all love, sis." Love, to her, meant dominance wrapped in a bow. The brunch was ending. People began to gather for group photos. Celine, of course, orchestrated the seating, positioning herself front and center. I stood off to the side, sipping lukewarm tea. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something else. Hollowed. Fading. Then she raised her glass one last time. "To Ayla's big day," she began, turning slowly toward me. "And my fabulous 40th. Applause. Smiles. Even a whistle. I didn't clap. I didn't smile. I just looked down at my plate, still untouched. And for the first time, I wasn't wondering what she'd take next. I was wondering what I would do if she tried. I kept hearing her voice in my head. Not from the brunch. Not from high school. Not even from the birthday banner at the engagement party. It was the way she said it. Calm, almost playful. "Oh, sorry. I accidentally dropped it." Like she had just brushed a napkin off the table. Not my wedding dress. Not the thing I had spent 6 months designing, altering, envisioning myself in. The thing that carried every ounce of hope I had stitched into a future I thought I was finally allowed to have. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The night started off pleasant, oddly enough. We were at the family's lake house, tucked along the shoreline just outside Charleston. The air still held a touch of spring coolness, but the fire pit helped with that. There were string lights draped from tree to tree, and laughter echoed off the water as kids chased fireflies and the adults sipped wine. I wore jeans and a flannel shirt. Blaine brought a folding chair just for the two of us. It should have felt like a normal evening. Easy, light. Celine arrived late. Of course she did. When she stepped into the backyard, people started clapping like she was returning from war. She had that kind of presence, demanded attention without asking for it. She wore white again, not ivory, white. This time, it was a jumpsuit, silky, plunging neckline, cinched at the waist with a rhinestone belt. Subtle? No, but undeniably stunning. She strolled across the lawn like she owned the place, holding a drink in one hand, phone in the other. At one point, I watched her reposition a lantern on the picnic table just so the light would hit her better in photos. I tried to stay near the fire pit. I chatted with Blaine's cousin about lawn care, of all things. I laughed at a dad joke one of my uncles made. I helped Mom bring out the dessert tray without commenting on how Celine hadn't lifted a finger. But it only took one moment to unravel the illusion. Celine made a toast. "Sisters," she said, raising her glass. "Fire. And unforgettable memories." The group cheered. She beamed. Then she held up a large plastic garment bag and turned toward the fire. "Oops," she said. "I almost sat on this." I recognized the bag immediately. It was clear with a navy zipper, the same one my boutique used. I froze. I hadn't brought it. No one else was supposed to have it. She took a step forward, half a smile on her face, then stumbled ever so slightly, like she was wearing heels on gravel. The bag slipped from her hand. It landed in the fire. There was a collective gasp. I bolted forward. Someone yelled, "Oh my God!" I reached for the edge of the bag, but flames had already licked through the plastic. I felt heat sting my hands before I could even touch it. Blaine grabbed my arm and pulled me back. "Don't," he said. "You'll burn yourself." The bag was gone in seconds. My dress, gone. And Celine? She laughed. Not out loud, not a full cackle, but a smirk twisted the corners of her mouth like she'd just pulled off a prank. Then came the line. "Oh, sorry. I accidentally dropped it." No one moved. No one said anything. Then Mom stepped in. "Celine didn't mean to." "Right, honey?" she said, glancing at her older daughter like she was still a 5-year-old caught with a crayon on the wall. "I mean, obviously," Celine replied with a shrug. I stared at her. At both of them. My voice caught in my throat. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even pain. It was silence. That silence, the kind that roars in your ears louder than any scream ever could, settled around me like a coat. I sat down on the edge of a bench near the fire and watched the embers where my dress used to be. The smell of burnt tulle and lace clung to the night air. No one offered to leave. No one pulled Celine aside. Conversations slowly resumed, like someone had just knocked over a drink and we were all pretending it didn't stain the carpet. Blaine sat next to me. His hand hovered, then landed gently on my back. He didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Later that night, after we packed up and people left, I asked him to drive separately. I needed time alone. Needed to clear my head before I said something I couldn't take back. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't cry. I just kept replaying that moment, the way the bag fell, how no one looked surprised, how Mom rushed to protect Celine before she even glanced at me. At home, I went straight to my closet. My heart thudded in my chest as I reached for the second garment bag, the one I'd hidden in the back, the backup dress I never told anyone about. Just in case the alterations hadn't been done in time, I unzipped it. It was empty, not even tissue paper. The hanger was still there, but the dress? Gone. I sat on the floor of my bedroom for a long time, the bag crumpled beside me. That wasn't a mistake. That was planned. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I laid there in the dark, my body still, my mind running like it was racing toward a wall with no break. I replayed the flames, the smirk on her face, the casual tone of her voice, the emptiness in the garment bag I thought was safe. There was no doubt anymore, not even the slightest bit of denial I could hold on to. Celine hadn't just ruined a dress. She had executed a plan. And somehow, everyone had played their part in it, even if unknowingly, even if silently. The next morning, I got up before the sun. I didn't wake Blaine. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just grabbed my car keys and drove straight to the boutique where I had ordered my dress. It was still early. The storefront was dark when I arrived, but the owner, Stephanie, usually came in before opening hours. I sat in the car, watching the sky brighten, waiting for her to arrive. She pulled up around 7:30 a.m., coffee in one hand, giant keyring in the other. She smiled when she saw me. "Ayla, everything okay?" "I'm not sure," I said. "Do you have a minute?" She led me inside, flipping on the lights as we walked. The place smelled like fabric glue and lavender. I didn't sugarcoat it. "I think someone came here last week and picked up my dress," I said. "But it wasn't me." Stephanie frowned, setting her coffee down on the counter. "That's odd. We usually have the bride sign. Let me check the records." She clicked around on her computer, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, says here it was picked up last Wednesday. Your sister came by, Celine, right? She said it was an emergency, something about a fitting that got moved up." My hands curled into fists. Stephanie looked up at me. "Was that not okay?" I forced a breath out through my nose. "No, it wasn't." She blinked, then whispered, "I'm so sorry." I shook my head. "Don't be. It's not your fault." But it told me everything I needed to know. She'd stolen it. A full week before the bonfire. She had gone to the boutique, lied to the owner, and taken my actual wedding gown, which meant the one I'd seen go up in flames wasn't the real one. It was a decoy. One she had planted just to make a show out of destroying something sacred to me. It wasn't just a dress. It was a declaration. And now it was war. I thanked Stephanie, promised to follow up later about options, and left before I let the anger spill out of my mouth in ways I would regret. On the drive back, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even turn on the radio. I drove in silence, my knuckles white against the steering wheel, my mind working faster than it had in years. Later that evening, Mom invited everyone over for dinner. Her version of healing always included casseroles and forced smiles. She said it was just to clear the air after the bonfire incident, as if that whole night had simply been an awkward family moment instead of a premeditated humiliation. I didn't want to go. Every part of me rebelled at the thought of being in the same room as Celine, but I also knew I needed to keep playing the part, for now. When I arrived, the house was filled with the smell of lasagna and artificial warmth. Blaine was already there, seated in the living room with my uncle. Celine was in the kitchen, sipping wine, laughing with a few cousins like nothing had happened. I stayed quiet. Dinner began. The table was long and cluttered with plates and glasses. Conversation flowed with surface-level comfort, weather, real estate, the usual Charleston chatter. Then Celine stood. She clinked her glass for attention. "Before we dig into dessert, I just want to say a few words," she announced. I braced myself. "I know things have been a little tense," she said, her tone dripping with mock sincerity. "But I think it's important we all remember what really matters. Family." Some people nodded. Mom beamed. "And since we're here celebrating love and growth," Celine continued, raising her glass toward me, "I'd like to make a toast to my baby sister. To Elena." "Oh, sorry," she said, letting out a faux laugh. "I meant Ayla." The table erupted in laughter, except for Blaine and me. He turned and looked directly at me, his face stone cold. I didn't say anything. I didn't touch my glass. I stared at her, and for the first time, I didn't look away when she smirked. I let the silence hang. Later, after everyone had left, I stayed behind under the pretense of helping Mom with dishes. Celine had already disappeared upstairs. I washed, rinsed, dried. I didn't say much. Neither did Mom. As I was about to leave, Mom touched my arm. "Sweetheart," she said softly. "Celine didn't mean anything by it." I pulled my arm back gently. "I know," I replied. "She never does. That's the beauty of it." I drove home slow. Blaine met me at the door. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, then shook my head. "No," I admitted, "but I will be." I poured myself a glass of water, took it to my desk, and opened my laptop. I created a new folder. I titled it Truth. Then I started typing names, dates, events, the boutique, the bag, the laugh, the dinner. They wanted a game, fine. But this time, I wasn't just going to sit at the table. I was going to flip it. I woke up with a headache I hadn't earned. No drinking the night before, no crying, no screaming into pillows. Just a growing, pulsing weight behind my temples, the kind you get when you're carrying something heavier than you're built for. For the rest of that day, I stayed quiet. I kept my schedule simple. I folded laundry, made tea, and answered only the most urgent emails, all while glancing over at the folder named Truth on my desktop. I hadn't added anything new yet, but I knew I would. The moment hadn't arrived, but it was close. Around 7 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Swing by the house, just a quick chat with Celine. We're all here." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked out the window, watching the trees sway just slightly, like they were breathing. Then I got up, grabbed my keys, and drove over. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun was already dipping low, casting long shadows across the front porch. Blaine's car was nowhere in sight. Good, I thought. I didn't want to have to explain myself. Not tonight. I walked in without knocking. It was still my childhood home, after all. The smell of pot roast hit me first, mixed with the faintest hint of Celine's perfume, something sharp and expensive, always hovering just before she entered a room. Voices filtered in from the study. I paused just outside the door. It was slightly ajar. I didn't plan to listen. Not really. But when I heard my name, Well, it's human nature, isn't it? If she cracks, we need to have a plan, Celine was saying, her voice low but clear. You can't risk the whole thing unraveling just because Ayla's having an emotional episode. She's under a lot of pressure, Mom replied. But yes, if something happens, someone should be prepared. You know I can handle it, Celine said smoothly. I've organized every major part of this wedding anyway. If she pulls out last minute, God forbid, it won't be a disaster. A pause. Then Mom's voice again. You've always been dependable, Celine. I didn't move, not even a breath. It wasn't just what they said. It was how easily they said it, like they'd practiced, like this wasn't a new conversation. I backed away slowly, turned and left through the back door. I didn't want to be seen. I couldn't trust that I'd hold my composure if I had to smile through dinner. I needed to think. So I drove straight to Blaine's apartment. He opened the door within seconds, barefoot, hair damp like he'd just showered. Hey, he said, smiling. Didn't expect you tonight. Can we talk? He stepped aside without asking questions. Yeah, of course. I sank into his couch, the fabric still warm. Blaine sat across from me, elbows on his knees. He waited. I overheard Celine and my mother, I said. They were talking like I'm the contingency plan. Or maybe I'm the liability. Like if I fall apart, Celine can just take over. His brows furrowed. Take over what? The wedding, I said. My wedding, my role in it. He blinked. They would, I cut in. And they have. Blaine, she took my dress. She destroyed a decoy in the fire. She smiled while doing it. Blaine didn't speak right away. His fingers laced together, knuckles whitening. Then finally, he exhaled and said quietly, There's something I need to tell you. I tensed. Okay. In college, before you and Celine and I had a thing. It wasn't serious. It didn't last long. But it happened. My heart didn't drop. It didn't twist. It just froze. He continued. I didn't think it mattered back then, but when we started dating, she warned me not to tell you, said you'd take it the wrong way, and then she kept lingering, commenting. I always shut it down, Ayla. Always. I stared at him, my throat tightening. Did you ever want her back? No, he said firmly. Not once. Not since meeting you. I nodded slowly. Okay. Silence stretched between us like a canyon. You're not angry? He asked. I'm not sure, I answered honestly. But I appreciate you telling me now. That matters. I left not long after that. I didn't ask him to come with me. I didn't tell him how it made me feel. He already knew. And I wasn't ready to explain it out loud. Back home, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. I opened the family group chat. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a few seconds before I typed, The next time someone jokes about replacing me, I'll walk. And I won't walk alone. I hit send. And no one replied. Not Celine, not Mom, not even the cousins who usually jumped at any notification. I placed my phone face down on the nightstand, turned off the light, and laid back on the pillow. My body was still, but my mind was sharp. One more line crossed, I whispered to the dark. Just one. Celine never did understand subtlety. The warning I sent out in the group chat didn't rattle her, not even a little. If anything, it seemed to amuse her. I knew I wouldn't have to wait long for her next move. She had no off switch. She played offense in a game no one else had signed up for. 3 days after that message, we met again, this time at the bridal rehearsal at the boutique-turned-event space downtown. Mom insisted we do it early in the morning to beat the Charleston humidity, though I suspected it was more about managing Celine's lighting preferences for photos than the weather. I arrived just before 9 a.m., still shaking the stiffness from a night of tossing and turning. The rehearsal wasn't supposed to be fancy, but Celine had somehow turned it into a styled shoot. She was already there, of course, draped in a long, blush satin robe, hair curled, makeup set like she was walking into a bridal catalog. As I stepped through the boutique doors, one of my second cousins let out a low whistle. Wow, Celine, you should try on the real gown next time, just in case. Celine flashed a grin, cocking her head toward me. Well, someone has to keep the energy alive. I laughed, but not like I used to. This time, it was low, controlled, the kind of laugh that says, I see what you're doing, and I'm still here. I looked directly at her, let the silence hang for just a second longer than comfort allowed, then walked past her without another word. The boutique staff had arranged the space for the rehearsal, a narrow aisle lined with ivory folding chairs, a floral arch in the back, and a stand-in officiant who clearly didn't know the family drama he'd stepped into. We went through the motions. Who walks when, who stands where, which side the parents sit on. Blaine kept looking at me, silently checking in. I nodded when I needed to, smiled when appropriate, but I wasn't present. I was watching. Every glance, every whisper, every twitch of Celine's lip when someone complimented me instead of her. After the walkthrough, while others chatted and sampled pastries from the refreshment table, I wandered into the back storage area to speak with one of the boutique attendants. I wanted to check on the status of the replacement dress, just to be sure it hadn't been, misplaced. A young woman named Gina greeted me. She recognized me immediately. "Oh yes, you're the bride," she said cheerfully. "Your dress is in the side room. Lovely piece. I think your sister came in a few days ago to pick up hers?" I blinked. "My sister?" "Yeah. Her gown is being kept in our climate-controlled unit. Your mom requested premium storage for her." My pulse ticked up. I kept my voice level. "And mine?" Gina hesitated. "Well, yours is still hanging on the display rack in the bridal room. There wasn't a request for special handling." Of course there wasn't. "Would you mind showing me where it is?" I asked. She walked me to a small back room. My dress, version 2, was hanging unzipped on a metal rack, right next to the emergency exit. No garment bag, no cover, just fabric exposed to dust and light. I took out my phone and snapped a picture, not for memory, for documentation. Gina seemed uneasy. Is everything okay?" I smiled tightly. "It will be." Back out front, people were starting to gather their things, chatting about lunch plans and other wedding errands. Celine stood near the archway, swirling her coffee like she was born for spotlights. I didn't plan to speak. But then someone, I don't even remember who, said loudly, "Let's take one last group photo. Maybe Celine should stand in as the bride for fun." That did it. I stepped forward. My heart beat steady. My voice was calm. "No need," I said. "Let's leave the role-playing to theater." Celine raised a brow. "It's a joke, Ayla." "Sure," I replied. "Like the dress that went up in smoke. Just a joke." The air stiffened. I continued, my tone still even. "Next time someone calls me a stand-in bride, I won't just walk away. I'll walk out, and I won't leave quietly. I'll take every secret with me." The room went silent. Celine's jaw clenched, but she forced a chuckle. "Wow, dramatic much?" Mom started to say something, but Blaine stepped between us. "We're done here," he said. Everyone began to move again, murmurs picking up like a scattered breeze. I didn't wait around for follow-ups. I grabbed my purse and headed out the door. Blaine followed. He didn't ask questions, just walked quietly beside me. We didn't talk much on the drive home. That night, after a long shower and a quiet dinner, I curled up on the couch with a blanket, hoping for a break from the chaos. But the universe had other plans. Around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. I opened the notification and felt my stomach turn. A photo. Me, in college, taken at a party, a red cup in my hand, slightly blurry, slightly crooked, but not inappropriate, until you added the caption someone had slapped across it. "Can't wait to see this walk down the aisle." Another photo. Me sitting on a porch step, laughing with someone who had long since faded from my life. Caption. "Who's the real Ayla?" My hands trembled, but I didn't panic. This wasn't new. It was just louder now. I put my phone down, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. "So this is how you want to play it," I whispered. It came at 2:11 a.m. I was half asleep, my body sunk into the couch, a cold tea still untouched on the side table. The apartment was quiet, except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator and the soft buzz of my phone vibrating across the coffee table. I grabbed it without much thought. Another text alert, then another, and another. 5 in a row from different contacts, some I hadn't spoken to in years, college friends, old coworkers, even a distant cousin from Michigan I hadn't seen since our grandmother's funeral. The messages varied in tone, some were apologetic, others just sent screenshots, but all of them pointed to the same thing. Celine had launched her next missile. The first image that loaded made my stomach turn, not because it was inappropriate, but because it was calculated. A heavily edited picture from college. Me at a party, mouth mid-laugh, someone's arm slung over my shoulder, a red cup in hand. The caption read, "The fairy tale wasn't always so picture perfect." Another showed me in an old dorm room, hair frizzy, face bare, with a poorly chosen filter over it. The caption below, "Wonder how Blaine feels about her before story." I didn't panic. I didn't cry. But I sat very, very still. Then came the final post, shared publicly to Celine's story. It was a black screen with white text. "Not everyone deserves the fairy tale they fake." That one stung, not because of what it said, but because of how many people would nod along without context. Celine had always known how to shape a narrative. She didn't need facts, just timing, tone, and the right crowd. I locked my phone and set it aside. I sat in silence for a while, staring out the window at the empty street below. Then my phone buzzed again. I hesitated before picking it up, expecting another passive-aggressive message, or perhaps Blaine checking in. But it wasn't that. This one was from an unknown number. The message was short. "She planned the bonfire. I was there. Here's proof." Attached were 2 screenshots. The first was a message thread, Celine texting someone labeled KT. "Just grab any white dress from consignment. Doesn't matter if it fits, it just has to burn right." The second was a follow-up. "Ayla's gonna freak, and Mom will tell her to calm down like always. It'll be iconic." I stared at the screen, heart thudding. No name, no identity on the sender. But it didn't matter. I had what I needed. I screenshotted everything, stored them into my truth folder, and closed my eyes. The shift had begun. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Someone else had stepped into the light with me, even if just through a phone screen. By noon the next day, whispers had started. People weren't calling me directly, but I noticed more eyes on my social profiles. Friends were liking old posts. Others were untagging themselves from Celine's photos. I hadn't said a word, but the air was changing. Then Blaine called. "I saw it," he said, before I could even say hello. "All of it." "I know," I said. "I commented," he added. That made me sit up straighter. "You what?" "I commented under her post. Just one word. Enough." I held the phone tighter. "You didn't have to." "I did," he cut in. "It's time someone stopped pretending this was all just personality quirks." She crossed the line. I didn't respond, but I felt something melt inside me, just slightly, enough to breathe. That evening, the family group chat exploded. Celine tried to spin the story, as expected. It was just humor. "Ayla's too sensitive." Mom chimed in, gently scolding both of us for airing dirty laundry where people could see it. I didn't engage. Until someone added me directly. "Ayla, what's your side?" I responded with a single message. "I'll speak when it matters most." And I meant it. I wasn't going to fight her in comments. I wasn't going to defend my dignity under a filtered post. I was going to speak in person, with facts, at the time of my choosing, not hers. The next morning, I had a scheduled meeting at the boutique with the planner and vendors to finalize some last-minute details. Blaine offered to come, but I told him I'd rather go alone. I needed clarity. I needed space to think without being comforted. The sun was sharp and hot when I pulled into the parking lot. I walked through the front doors of the boutique, greeted the staff politely, and made my way into the main fitting room where the planner usually set up her station. I turned the corner and stopped. Celine was already there. She stood near the mirror, her arms crossed, a smirk tugging at her lips. She didn't flinch when our eyes met. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said sweetly. "Still going through with it?" I didn't blink. I walked forward, placed my bag down gently, and looked her straight in the eyes. You should ask yourself that. She tilted her head. Excuse me? I repeated. You should ask yourself that. Her smile faltered just slightly. I leaned closer. Because when the truth comes out, there's no hiding behind smiles. She opened her mouth to reply, but I walked past her, leaving her with nothing but her reflection in the boutique mirror. The drive to the rehearsal dinner felt different, not tense, not rushed, not laced with the usual mental acrobatics I'd perfected over the years when Celine was involved. For once, I wasn't planning what I'd say, how I'd smile, what topics to avoid, or which version of myself might offend the least. I wasn't bracing for some barbed comment wrapped in silk or another passive-aggressive toast disguised as love. I wasn't rehearsing how to survive. I was just driving. The sky above Charleston held onto the last golden breath of summer, streaked with soft pastels. The air was thick with that unmistakable coastal perfume, salt, sun-warmed pavement, and magnolia. I rolled the windows down, let the wind move over my arm. It felt like something was being rinsed off me, layer by layer, like I was arriving as myself, unshielded. When I pulled into the venue's gravel parking lot, a low buzz of conversation floated through the air, mixed with the elegant hum of a string quartet. The breeze carried voices and laughter across the hedges and up to the grand white hall ahead. I parked, took a moment to look at my reflection in the rearview mirror, then stepped out into the early evening warmth. Inside, the scene was out of a lifestyle magazine. Tables stretched out in long rows, set with candles and peonies in silvery vases. Napkins were folded like origami swans, place cards inked in flawless calligraphy. Light from antique chandeliers bounced off crystal glasses and soft ivory tablecloths. It was the kind of setting meant to impress, to mask any fraying edges with curated beauty. But no amount of candlelight could smooth tension that buzzed just beneath the surface. Celine was by the center table, surrounded. Her laughter was just a little too loud, her smile too wide. She wore champagne gold, a dress clinging perfectly to her frame, and her hair was pinned back so tightly it looked like it might snap. Everything about her presentation was calculated, from the tilt of her head to the way she held her flute of Prosecco, a living photograph. She caught sight of me instantly, of course. Celine always saw me coming, always positioned herself to be seen first. Her eyes found mine, and I held her gaze as I made my way through the room. She raised her glass and called out, clear enough for everyone to hear, "To forgiveness and sisterhood." A few people clapped. Others raised their glasses. The toast hung awkwardly in the air. I lifted my glass, just slightly, but didn't drink. Instead, I held her stare. The evening unfolded in polite fragments, soft conversation, past hors d'oeuvres, the clink of forks on porcelain. There was laughter, but it felt rehearsed, the kind that belonged more to performance than joy. I made small talk with distant relatives, nodded when necessary, smiled when expected. But beneath the surface, I waited. And then, finally, the script broke. June stood. She had barely spoken all evening. She wasn't known for grand gestures or making scenes. But the second she pushed her chair back, something in the air shifted. Conversations hushed. Forks paused mid-air. I turned to her instantly, my breath catching in my chest. "I wasn't going to say anything," she began, her voice steady, but filled with something old, something sharp. "But I can't sit here and pretend anymore." All motion in the room stopped. Celine froze, her smile faltering at the edges. "I was asked to help with something," June continued, her hands folded calmly in front of her. "To deliver a dress to the Bonfire. I thought it was a surprise, a stylist's errand. No big deal." She paused. "But it wasn't. Celine asked me to make sure Ayla's real dress didn't make it. She gave me a decoy, and she made sure I brought the wrong one." Gasps rippled across the table. Someone whispered, "No way." Celine stood abruptly. "That's absurd. That's a misunderstanding. You didn't know what you were carrying. That wasn't my—" June cut her off without raising her voice. She calmly opened her clutch, pulled out her phone, and tapped the screen. "I saved the messages. And the voice memo, just in case I started to doubt my memory. She handed the phone to Blaine. He looked at her, then at the screen, scrolling through. His face changed as he read. Then he tapped play. Celine's voice poured into the room. Just make sure it burns. Doesn't have to be the real thing, as long as she thinks it is. Gasps again. Louder this time. Someone at the far end of the table let out a shocked, "Oh my God!" Mom stood up, visibly shaken. "Let's not do this here. Please, this is family." But Blaine wasn't listening to her. He handed the phone back to Dijun and turned to Celine. "Tell me it isn't true," he said, quietly. Celine opened her mouth. "It was a joke." "Tell me," he said again, louder now, "that you didn't plan that." She hesitated, her mouth twitched. And in that pause, her whole illusion cracked. That single second of silence said everything. Blaine reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his own phone. He scrolled, found what he was looking for, and held it up. Celine's social media post. The one she posted 3 days after the bonfire. Not everyone deserves the fairy tale they fake. He showed it to the table, then to her. "And this?" he asked, voice low, controlled. "Was this your idea of a joke, too?" Celine's expression collapsed in on itself. Her painted smile disappeared entirely. For once, she looked lost, small. Mom sat heavily back down, eyes wide and unblinking. Her voice was just a whisper now. "I let this happen. I defended you, all these years." Silence returned, but this time, it wasn't curated or elegant. It was real. I stood slowly. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant either. I was just done. "I didn't need to fight," I said simply, letting the words hang in the space where Celine's empire used to be. The truth had a voice of its own. Then I turned to Dijun. "Thank you." She nodded once, lips pressed together but eyes soft. Blaine moved to my side, reached gently for my hand, and we left. We didn't wait for dessert. We didn't offer a speech. We didn't look back. The air outside was cooler, crisper, the kind of Charleston evening where the humidity finally gives way to breeze and the sky turns from blue to lavender, as if exhaling. The walk to the car was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that follows chaos. It was the kind that follows clarity. 2 days later, I stood alone in a quiet boutique. No curated chaos. No social media content in progress. No Celine, just me. The dress hung from a wooden hanger, its lace catching the late afternoon light. The room was hushed, almost sacred. I stepped forward, ran my fingers along the fabric. New, untouched. It felt like a beginning. I looked at myself in the mirror. No drama, no sabotage, no damage to repair. Just a woman, reclaiming her story. I placed my hand gently on the bodice and whispered, "This time, it's mine." 2 mornings later, I woke up to the soft rustle of leaves tapping against my bedroom window. The sky was gray, heavy with the kind of calm that comes before something meaningful, not dramatic, not loud, but sacred. I sat up in bed, barefoot on the wooden floor, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. There was no chaos, no hair rollers flying, no screaming over misplaced earrings or last-minute changes, just me and a full breath. My wedding day had arrived. I made my coffee, black and steady, and sat at the kitchen table for a long while. I didn't scroll, I didn't check emails, I didn't rehearse vows in my head. The only sound in the room was the faint ticking of the old wall clock, counting down not to a finish line, but a beginning. Mine. The dress waited for me at the boutique. I didn't need help carrying it in. I took my time, brought it home the evening before, zipped it inside the garment bag like tucking in a newborn. I didn't let anyone else touch it. The ceremony was set for late afternoon at the lakeside garden behind Dijun's property. I had chosen it weeks ago when the venue drama with Mom started. Simple, open, quiet. It was everything Celine's spotlight-drenched energy wasn't. By noon, I was dressed. No makeup artist, no fanfare. Just me in front of a mirror. The dress, clean lines, soft satin, delicate lace at the sleeves, felt like breath. It didn't need to be flashy. It just needed to be mine. As I turned to check the back seam one last time, my fingers brushed across the top drawer of my vanity. I had nearly forgotten. Inside was a small, cream envelope, my name written in pen, the letters careful and slanted. The paper slightly yellowed at the edges. I recognized my grandmother's handwriting instantly. I had found the letter months earlier while helping Mom clean out the attic, tucked inside an old cookbook. "For Ayla's wedding day," it read. I almost didn't open it then. I wanted to wait for the right moment. That moment was now. I sat down, hands shaking just enough to feel it, slid my nail under the seal, unfolded the paper. A single page. "You were always soft, Ayla, but never weak. Remember that. The world may try to confuse the two, but they are not the same. You will be underestimated by those who see gentleness as frailty. Let them. The ones who burn your dresses can never burn your light." The tears came quietly. Not from sadness, but recognition. I saw myself, really saw myself. In her words, in this dress, in this moment. For the first time in years, I smiled without armor. By the time I arrived at the garden, the guests had already begun to gather. There were no rows of influencers snapping selfies, no grand floral installations. Just chairs under oak trees, wildflowers in mason jars, and the breeze skipping across the lake. Mom sat in the back row, alone. She didn't smile when I walked past her. She didn't cry either. Her hands were clasped in her lap like they were holding something fragile. Maybe regret, maybe confusion. I didn't linger. I had nothing more to say to her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Celine wasn't there. I hadn't sent her an invitation. Blaine stood at the front, tie slightly crooked, a dimple peeking out from his attempt at composure. When I reached him, he didn't say anything right away. He just took my hand and kissed it gently. "You didn't just show up," he whispered. "You owned it." The officiant began, voice steady and warm. I barely heard the words. All I felt was the sun on my skin, the grass beneath my feet, the quiet beat of my own heartbeat finally unaccompanied by fear. After the ceremony, people approached. They hugged. They smiled. Even the ones who had doubted me, who had laughed when Celine toasted me like a footnote, now looked at me like someone they hadn't fully understood until now. June waited until the end. She didn't speak right away, just placed a firm hand on my shoulder and nodded once. "Your silence made more noise than her spotlight ever could," she said. I nodded back. No words needed. Later that night, long after the candles had burned low and the final dish had been cleared, I sat on the porch alone, my dress now hanging in the hallway. My phone buzzed once. I picked it up. A notification. Celine has deactivated her account. That was it. No press release. No apology tour. Just silence. I had heard from a former colleague of hers that her client list had quietly started shrinking. Not from scandal, just cold space. No one likes working with someone who plays God and then gets caught. I never shared the screenshots, never posted a statement. Never explained to the world what she did. I didn't need to. The people who mattered knew. The people who didn't matter anymore. I leaned back, watching the night settle. The trees swayed gently, whispering old stories, carrying away what no longer belonged. As the breeze picked up, I said aloud, not to anyone, just to myself. Some people are raised to believe love is attention. I was raised to survive without it. Then I stood up, stepped off the porch, and walked barefoot across the grass beneath the oak trees. Free. Not perfect. Not untouched. But free. Not all battles need to be loud. Sometimes, the quietest strength is the one that changes everything. Ayla didn't win with rage. She won with truth, patience, and the power of walking away with her dignity intact. Have you ever kept silent until the truth spoke for you? Tell us in the comments. Your voice might be what someone else needs to hear. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and human, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's always another side to the family story.